You gotta love the smell of fresh flowers. And here at Como Park Zoo and Conservatory, in our sunken garden, we have an absolutely beautiful variety and selection of our flowers to enjoy at their peak blooms. You can see we have our lovely, huge oriental lilies. They're big and they're vibrant and they have such a strong fragrance. Sometimes when this entire room is blooming, I feel like you can smell it not just in the building, you can smell it outside. It's amazing, this beautiful, strong smell. But this smell isn't just for people. This smell is actually to help attract pollinators. And there's a lot of interesting aromas that flowers make to draw pollinators in. We talked about earlier in one of our season episodes, thanks to the Legacy Amendment, we talked a little bit about different pollination syndromes or different shapes and functions that flowers use to attract different pollinators. And this is a really important thing for plants to do. By attracting different pollinators, you're able to ensure that your pollinator is seeing flowers like you rather than seeing just any random flower that it wants to encounter. By having fewer flowers that your pollinator encounters, there's a better chance that your pollinator is going to end up visiting another flower of the same species, successfully pollinating you and spreading your pollen to other plants. So that's a really important goal. And since you want to attract just very specific pollinators, you do not want to have a generic scent. You might want to have something very unique. And you might notice as you come and visit our conservatory that many of our flowers have some really unique scents. If you happen to pop through our north garden or through the palm dome, you might encounter some orchids, which we'll be talking more about next week, that have some really interesting aromas. Personally, I think some of them smell like either fancy perfumes or even chocolate or root beer. Each of these smells are really different and intriguing, but they're trying to attract that very specific pollinator. If you were trying to attract a bee, a light floral scent might be all you need, since bees tend to use their eyes to look for those bright floral marks that would attract them to the flower they want to pollinate. If you're trying to attract someone else, you might end up using a very different scent. Here in the sunken garden with these big, gorgeous lilies, they're actually a really interesting hybrid that humans have selected for their big, showy flowers, and yes, their very strong fragrance. This might not seem like a strong advantage, but in the end, the pollinator they're attracting is people. And what are we attracted to? Big, showy flowers and that big floral fragrance, which is pretty cool. Not all flowers smell as sweet, though. Some flowers instead smell like meat. And that might sound kind of gross and weird, but it's a pretty good pollination technique. By having that strong and almost really unpleasant aroma, you're not attracting a pollinator like a bee who's going to be visiting other flowers throughout their visits. Instead, you're attracting a very specific animal, someone who needs meat to survive. And we have a couple of pretty cool examples here. Right now, these two flowers aren't blooming at this moment. Every plant has a different season, and in the case of this particular plant, this is actually the corpse flower, and you can see there's no flower on it. In fact, this is just one single leaf, which is pretty cool. This thing is actually almost as tall as I am. It's cheating. It took a couple of steps up, but that's okay. This big leaf helps it build up energy and reserves for the year that it decides that it's going to go for reproduction. And it will make an enormous bloom that will slowly grow and then unfurl and release this strong, incredible aroma that smells, exactly like rotting meat. Not exactly maybe a flower that you want as a bouquet, but it's really attractive to beetles and flies who are attracted to a potential carrion meal. By seeking out that dead meat to eat, they'd be sensing that smell from miles away, and they'd seek into it, and instead of getting a tasty treat, which is what they're hoping for, they're instead serving the pollination service of this particular flower. And since they're not going to go visit another flower, they're seeking meat, they're going to be sniffing out another rotting smell. Either they'll land on a tasty carcass to snack on or lay their eggs on, or they'll find another corpse flower and successfully pollinate this flower, which would be pretty cool. So this is a really successful system where you're not going to get accidental cross-pollination or wasted energy. This plant, like I said, isn't blooming right now. These don't bloom every year, but some greenhouses, their corpse flowers are blooming, and I actually have some links to share with you on our website for some other fellow botanical gardens who are currently enjoying the sweet smell of death. Sorry, but it's still pretty cool. A smaller example is this little friend. And this one looks pretty strange, but it gets even stranger. This is a Stapelia plant, and this one isn't blooming at the moment either. And its blooms, as you'll be able to see here, are absolutely outrageous. I think they look like something straight out of the Upside Down in Stranger Things. They have this weird split open curling look. They look kind of frightening, honestly. But what's really interesting is they have this strange furry texture and little polka dots all over them. And these little weird speckles and this strong, fragrant odor of meat and rot is attracting flies very specifically. Those little polka dots, which give it this kind of weird color and texture look, are actually to mimic fly eggs. And a fly is often seeking out meat not just to feed itself, but as a perfect medium for laying its eggs so that its maggots, its larvae, have something to eat. By seeking that out, they're seeing a place that seems to smell like delicious food and looks like it's good real estate since apparently other flies have been laying their eggs. Those flies land looking for the suitable meat to lay their eggs on, end up picking up pollen or depositing pollen if they've been at another Stapelia plant, and without successfully laying eggs, they move on looking for the next tasty snack opportunity. Now, for the Stapelia, this might seem like a really odd strategy, but it's incredibly effective. A lot of those scavenging flies that utilize meat as a form to lay their eggs on, they're actually doing a really good job. They have amazing sensory skills. Some of them can detect a carcass mere hours after it's passed, and they're able to get there really quickly so that they can lay their eggs at the optimal time for them to successfully reproduce. Since their senses are so honed in to those rotting smells, those really strong, gross aromas that we don't enjoy on the side of the road or in other places, those flies can hone in on that. And they're such good specialists at finding it that they're really successful in finding these plants to pollinate them. And flies are always around because meat is always around. So it's an easily accessible pollinator that's pretty trustworthy and useful. So by having different solutions, plants are able to successfully pollinate in all sorts of different ways, which is pretty cool. From bats being attracted by musky aromas, to the sweet smells that attract bees, to the really, really interesting, weird and pungent aromas that can attract beetles, and some of the gross smells that end up attracting flies. So when you join us here at the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory by making your advanced registrations on our website, comozooconservatory.org, come on by our gardens and take the time to smell the flowers. It's definitely worth it. Thanks so much for joining us, and tune in for next week where we'll talk a little bit about orchids. Thanks so much. Bye. Hey everyone, Beth back here for a quick sneak part of this episode, a little bonus bit. So we actually started filming our olfactory episode just last week, and as we were filming and talking about this, our corpse flower wasn't blooming, which was kind of a bummer. We really wanted to share that with you, but the great news is horticulturist Jen was able to provide us with a different species this week that just started blooming. She was so excited, she let me know, and I was so excited I just had to share. So I wanted to add this little bonus part in, and I can't wait to show you. I really wish we had smell-o-vision so that I could send this to you through the vibes of this video, but I'll try to get this experience and describe it to you a little bit. I've never been so excited to smell something really gross and stinky in my entire life. So I'm really excited to share this with you. Let's take a look. So our flower is actually blooming right now, and this is the bloom, this whole big thing. Looks like some cool, weird goth version of the largest calla lily you've ever seen. It's this big folding petal. And then down here you can see this is a different species and it's got a slightly smaller leaf to it. It's about up to about my mid chest, so it's really tall. And this area here, this is where all the smell is coming from, is deep in this flower here. And it's way in there. You can see there's kind of these speckly bits down low. And between those speckly bits and you can see kind of these glistening, shiny bits, this is actually the scent coming off of it, the aroma. And these kind of glistening bits and those speckle bits are what's attracting the flies. And that's attracting the flies as a visual cue, but it's also that other sensory cue, that olfactory cue that's making that smell. And I'm gonna, for science, this is for science, I'm gonna take a whiff, all right? You ready? Let's see what this smells like. Whoa, so I really want to describe this to you. It's got kind of this oily, scenty sheen to it. It's actually almost beautiful in its iridescence, but the smell is less than beautiful. A little background on my experience. I'm a biologist by trade. My focus is in animal biology and zoology, and I have worked with a lot of live animals in all sorts of situations. I've dissected animals for courses. I've also, I've even had some really smelly experiences, including even having a turkey vulture vomit near me once. And I can tell you, as someone who's had experience encountering things like roadkill or vulture vomit, which are both pretty gross, this isn't the worst thing I've ever smelled, but I would probably never seek out planting this on my own. It's an aroma. It's definitely in that, oh, there's a fly coming to visit it right now. Check this out. Oh, maybe it might come back. I hope it comes back. It's so smelly. It honestly smells like roadkill. It smells like rotting meat. It's kind of that round, full bouquet, hint of nuttiness that you get from like roadkill when it's in that juicy stage on the side of the road on a hot day. Definitely not at its peak. You're not like poking the dead thing, but it's definitely smelly. While I've brought it here to the sunken garden so it gets a chance to spend time with these other beautiful flowers, I have a feeling that our horticulture team is probably never going to do a full plant show of meat smelling plants in here, which is probably for the best, but a little bit of a bummer. This plant is really special too and needs its chance to shine. And it's definitely doing that. It already was attracting a wild fly coming by to visit it just now. Hopefully it has lots more coming to visit it. And this is such a cool thing. I'm so glad I was able to share it with you. I really wish we could send you some scratch and sniff stickers of it so you could enjoy it. But take the time to get out there and smell the roses, no matter how they smell, and get out there and enjoy and get closer.